I did not sleep well. Did not sleep very long. After last night, we held a memorial for Andy McCaffrey. Andy took his own life on the 18th. So we hosted a memorial for him and his crew, and I mean all the crews that he had. He had lots of community. He really did, and he had people that really loved him. And he was a gruff dude. I mean, everything about him was gruff and intimidating. And several of the people that were on the call were people that got on the other side of that gruffness and saw the light within, and just loved him for it. So no matter what his exterior was, what really shone is his inner light, right? His inner divinity, whatever you want to call it. But people got it. Open-heartedness, people got it, and people loved him for it. And he was brave, and warriors loved him. Warriors loved him. Peaceful people loved him. It was great. So we had that last night, and I had a hard time falling asleep afterwards, and I didn't sleep very long. And then I got up early, walked the dog, and then tried to take a nap on the couch, waiting for the day to start. So now here we are. But the topic for today is all about predictability. And the bottom line is your demons hate it when you're predictable and when things are sustainable. But demons are very clever in that you have to be sustainable and predictable in all aspects of your being, not just one or two. And so the way I think about it is I always think about my human experience in three ways. There's the idea experience, which is kind of my story, who I am, Ben. There's the physical part of the experience, which is the body. And that's another thing to think about. The first part, the idea, is that the idea takes place in the past and into the future. So it has an expectation of time. The experience of the body is the present moment. So its expectation is now. And then there's the spiritual side, which is forever. So it's time, the present moment, forever. And the mystery is the mystery because it's hard to pin down. But anyway, you cultivate a level of predictability and sustainability in all three. That's very important to understand. All three realms. Then it's really just a matter of just honing that and participating with that, and life will just evolve around you. It's just what happens. And Andy was a perfect reflection of that in two ways, but not three. And in the way of his identity is what kind of gave him his edge, but also gave him his warm-heartedness. Because once you got past the identity that he presented, you could experience just this incredible specialness about him. And that was a spiritual quality. It was not a physical quality. The physical stuff was hard, stuff you had to get through. But the spiritual quality was just like, man, you could just spend time with Andy and the time disappeared and it was just special. But where Andy was not predictable and not sustainable was his physical experience. He was a major alcoholic. And part of the reason for that was he had a lot of guilt in his heart. And the guilt was just a massive burden. And the way I think he mostly dealt with it was through alcohol. But it was partly because of it was people. He loved people. He loved being around and interacting with people as well. So it wasn't, the alcohol part was part of his love for being around people. But the point I'm trying to make is his relationship to alcohol and his relationship to the things that gave him the most kind of positive feedback was fundamentally unsustainable. He could not keep it up. And the problem with it being unsustainable is that when you embody an unsustainable quality, the other parts of your being become less influential. So, I mean, the neighbor described the last night. He was surrounded by people that cared about him. He had people right there supporting him, caring about him. But that's not enough. It's not enough to have people care about you. It's not enough to have people say something nice to you. It's not enough to say, reach out, I love you, I take care of you, blah, blah, blah. It's not enough. I mean, what you have to have is sustainable patterns that you can rely on over the long haul. And those sustainable patterns have to foster other sustainable patterns. So any pattern that you have can't be a sustainable pattern if it's not fostering other sustainable patterns. It's just not how it works. So you can, I mean, it's kind of like a person in power could say one thing, do another, and then have everything be done in the spirit of just darkness. And the only thing that would be like accurate is the lie, right? It's just it's accurate because of course it's a lie. It's dark. It doesn't have any truth to it. It's all bullshit. So the point is that if one thing is really, really solidly in place, it can have an impact on everything else. And that unsustainable element of alcohol really has a lot to do with sleep. And if you don't get sleep, everything's screwed. And so I know for Andy, the experience of not being able to sleep, and then the fear of the day of, I'm going to go through this day with no sleep and I'm not going to sleep again tonight. That fear, I know, and that fear is a terrible thing because what that creates is what the demons just love. They just love it. And what they love about it is the doubt and the fear that shows up as you kind of marshal your energy for another night of sleeplessness, or as you marshal your energy for another day of like feeling shitty, or as you marshal your energy for, if I can just get to the other side of this hangover, or if I could just get to the other side of this headache, then everything will be fine. But you do that enough, and it's just a recipe for space that the demons like. Like, that's the thing. It's not like tag, right? Demon shows up, tag, you're it. It's more like a relationship starts to build. I've called it the dark authority. It's like this darkness descends, and the authority that used to be kind of you is now this kind of is now this dark authority. It's now this malevolent authority. Malevolence is kind of an evil, darkness, conniving, vicious, but it can also be presented in a kind of non-dark way. That's what's so tricky about the demons, is the demons don't show up as, fuck you, you're an idiot, da 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 da. They come after that. All the self-loathing, blah 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 blah. The demons solve that. The self-loathing is your ego, your identity, but the demon is the dark authority that shows up after that's kind of worn out. It's like a built-in, like, I don't know, it's like a built-in culling mechanism. It's like you get enough kind of, I don't know, dark stimulus or doubt, worry, or fear, and then there's this piece that shows up as a fixer, it's okay, I know how to fix this, or it's this is going to be fine. Like, you can make this go away quickly. This is cool. So it's a tricky thing. I mean, of course, we don't really talk about it, right? We're always talking about preventing it, but we don't typically talk about the demons. I mean, this is the first week I've ever dedicated a week to talking about demons, and I still feel weird just saying the word demon. It's kind of like I used to feel weird saying the word love. Um, so it's a scary thing to talk about because it is forever. And so anyway, back to the whole thing. That was Andy's weakness right there, was that pattern. That physical pattern was disruptive in such a consistent way that it leaked out into everything. And when there wasn't enough light, the dark authority just took over. And in the very last night, apparently he was sitting outside with his neighbor. His neighbor was just a sweet man. I think he's married to just another sweet person. Just these two sweet people who moved into the same building as Andy, were Andy's neighbor, and they became friends over building a bench outside so that people could kind of still interact with each other around COVID. And of course, this guy saw what everybody else saw when they interacted with Andy, that he's a good dude. And so they just built this little garden together with bird feeders and benches, and they just built it together. And the last night, the guy knew that something was really down with Andy. He could see it, right? He could see that inside of him. And as they were walking up the steps, I think he helped Andy up the steps to his apartment, and he said, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I made the sign of the cross and blessed him. And that was probably the last thing. I think Andy said, yeah, bless you too, right? But I think that was like the last thing to happen. So that was it. That was, that little, right? That's light and darkness, right? Whatever you forget about the religious quality of it, but that's a sign of light and darkness, right? And it wasn't enough. And it's not that it's not enough. It's not enough in the context of unsustainable behaviors. And so there has to be a conversation around that. There has to be a conversation around that. And I am someone who is moving in the direction of unsustainable behavior. I drink too much. So I'm going to start on the 1st. I'm starting 75 hard. I think it's what it's called, or hard 75 or something like that. But it's 75 days, no alcohol, lots and lots of water, and some other rules. But it's all about kind of a mental toughness kind of thing. So I plan on doing that. I'm going to do that for Andy. I'm going to be like, hey man, I'm going to kind of just going to reassert my authority over any pattern that I have that could develop into a really, really unsustainable pattern. So that's what I'm going to do on the 1st. And I invite you to join me. It's just 75 hard. You go online. Don't even have to sign up for it. Just go online to see that it's real, see the rules, and then you do it with me. It's going to suck. My patterns include alcohol on a regular basis, and not the type of drinking that I know Andy did, but I very regularly have 2 or 3 glasses of wine. Mostly it's one or two, but oftentimes it's 2 or 3. And that's been a pattern through COVID. And so I'm gonna go right at that pattern, the unsustainable aspects of that pattern, and I'm gonna shut it down for 75 days and then reassess. But that's like, we have to have that conversation with ourselves, and we have to have it with the people that we care about, because that's what it weakens the will. And when the will is weakened, and tragedy, trauma, steady trauma, insomnia, when those things hit, that's the space for the dark authority to be like, I got this. Anyway, it's awesome. This is also the 34th stanza of The Art of Peace, which we'll read after the training. It's going to be a quick one. I'm going to go through pretty quick. So 1 cup of coffee, and I'm tired. So nothing special today. Just gonna make this quick, down and dirty. Just listen for the sound of the bell to disappear in your ears. And just look for the silence. Quiet. In between sound. Feel what's beneath you. Feel your sit bones, core, heart space, throat, top of the head. Start focusing on your breathing. Let's max out 3 times. "34. Foster and polish the warrior spirit while serving in the world. Illuminate the path according to your inner light." And so the bottom line is the power that you have inside yourself grows when you and then others can trust your stability. And getting back to this basic idea, the opposite of kind of the demon is the light of love, the burning light of love, right? And that light burns strong as sustainability and predictability in all phases begin to be the thing that you don't have to think about. That's another thing about love that's really important to point out. You don't have to think about love. Like, love is. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to do anything. The demons require a lot. Like, the demons require everything, and you have to. All this stuff has to happen before they kind of show up, and it's all like dark, like darkness. Like, it has to have all that stuff. Love doesn't have to have anything, right? Love just is. And so, like, that's just what starts to happen. So, like, you don't have to think about sleep, right? When you're in a bad pattern, you have to think about stuff a lot. You have to plan for stuff. You have to kind of deal with stuff. And it just takes a ton of energy. Love doesn't take any energy. Love just is. Love is the energy. So you just, instead of having to do it all yourself, you just rely more and more deeply on love, and love does it. For real. It's like the coolest thing ever. But love can easily be superseded by really bad patterns. So it's a little bit of a heavy post today. Sorry about that. I'll see you tomorrow.